You probably heard in the last 24 hours about the President of Ireland who was in the United Nations in New York. So there's many things to cover here. There were three things I suppose to cover here. So just to give a bit of context, I suppose, so a lot of Irish people would know. But a few weeks, well, about a month ago, let's give or take a month ago, um, the president, there was a new president of Iran. So usually the head of state of Ireland, take for example Alexander Stubbs in Finland when he was elected in March. Usually the head of state, obviously the head of state Michael Higgins, the president of Ireland, would send best wishes or his congratulations to the head of state, whichever country it is. Take for example, if it's the United States, if it's Poland, usually they would send a letter to that president, whoever he or she may be, congratulating them and wishing them the best. You know, it's usually a diplomatic thing that the heads of state would do. You know, it's a kind gesture, I suppose, as a goodwill, basically. So Michael Higgins did it for the Iranian president. So this is basically where all this started, just to give context to this. Now, personally, I didn't say, I probably did in one of my live streams say something about it, but I personally don't think we should have said any congratulations or any best wishes to the president of Iran. Not only, like, you know yourself with the abuse women are injected to in the Iranian regime, take for example, in denied education and stuff, and even execution of women just for standing up and standing up for themselves. You know, we've seen that happen, and they've killed many women, executed them because of that. And personally, as a country in the West, as a democracy, as a country that should chat, obviously Ireland, as some know, they say about free speech, etc., etc. But you know, in theory, Irish democracy, and particularly the West, we shouldn't really have anything to do. We shouldn't really want to have anything to do with the country. And personally, I don't think we should have, because of the abuses that's going on in Iran. And not even that, you know, we're not that prone on democracy, etc., etc. We shouldn't really have anything to do with it. Simple as that, to be totally honest with you. But I understand as a diplomatic sense, I'm sure everybody would agree. You know, every state wants to try and keep decent relations with every country. I'm sure everybody understand that. It's all a kind of diplomacy game, and that's really it. But personally, if I was the president, I wouldn't have done it. Suppose that I wouldn't have acknowledged it anyway, shape or form that the Iranians got a new president, take for example, or if it's any other authoritarian state, same with China, I wouldn't acknowledge it, I wouldn't talk about it. Suppose that, what if it was a democracy and there was an election, take for example, you know, I would acknowledge that, but I don't think Michael Higgins should have done it, but I get, when you know the game of diplomacy, you know, you kind of get it when you look at that angle. But still, nonetheless, I don't think Michael Higgins every day that should be saying human rights this and then the next day turn around to a regime that doesn't appreciate, you know, people's freedom of expression. And that's what really it's about too in Iran too, women expressing their opinion and trying to gain their rights which they deserve to be educated, etc., etc. It shouldn't be happening, to be totally honest, and particularly as a country in the West, we shouldn't be giving them any kind of legitimacy, I suppose, if that makes any sense. That's just my ultimate view on it. But secondly, so basically he sent the letter, and basically how this all came about, why I'm talking about this now, is yesterday particularly. Now, the person was in the United Nations, who said at the United Nations General Assembly, and he said about the letter, and somebody asked him probably, I think it was about the letter, and he said the Israeli embassy leaked the letter to the press and to the public, to the general public. But that kind of doesn't seem to be true. It doesn't seem to be true because it was put on the Iranian Twitter account, the Iranian embassy's Twitter account, and it was reported in the Iranian news over there. So I don't think it was the Israeli government. As far as I may, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. Because if it was the Israeli government, the president basically is accusing them of sabotage, of espionage. So I don't think so, because it does seem to be that it was the Iranian government embassy here that leaked the letter to the public, to the general public, to the people, and then it was published obviously in Iran too. So I don't think it was that. So that's what's causing a lot of controversy. And then the third thing, I suppose too, and this is kind of the main thing, because as you know, as president of Ireland, and this is the thing, I think even Conor McGregor doesn't understand this either. But as president of Ireland, you can't really say too much. You're basically only a figurehead. You're not the Taoiseach or the Taoiseach. You're just basically there to tick the box, basically. You're just a box ticker, basically. You don't really have much of a public say. You don't have a say really in anything, apart from laws and stuff, making sure the constitution. You don't really you're supposed to basically say nothing, basically. about topics in the country. So Michael Higgins said about... So this all started to just go back a bit. Taoiseach Simon Harris the other day, came out and said that the rise in homelessness is to do with asylum seekers coming over here, and that's to do with the rise in homelessness, why it's the biggest number in the history of the state. Now, maybe that is true. That probably is true. There's probably loads of asylum seekers that are counted on the homeless register, that they're counted as homeless. So that's probably true. I know Michael Higgins disagreed with that, even though, again, the person really shouldn't really, in the constitutional sense, he has a say, of course, but he shouldn't really be airing it publicly, because basically he's supposed to be supporting the government, or whatever the government does. I know that sounds pretty lame and stuff like that, but really, that's what really the Constitution's about. The president doesn't have any say in political matters, in terms of legislation, in terms of what's happening in the country. The only thing has a say in is in the laws that's passed. He has to sign off and to make sure the Constitution. That's basically it. And the Commander-in-Chief of the Army, the representative, as I say, sending letters to foreign dignitaries, to presidents and stuff as head of state. That's really the only role the president is, Commander-in-Chief of the Army. But again, the Commander-in-Chief of the Army role is a ceremonial role. He doesn't have an active participation in day-to-day one of the defence forces, for example. So he came out and said he didn't agree with the Taoiseach, that it was that it did have a role in the thing. So basically they've been back and forth, and it came up with this discussion, same when he mentioned about Irish neutrality, which I did agree with him before, that the Irish state is becoming more, I don't know what you call militarised. It's not really militarised, but going into the NATO camp, I suppose, getting into abandoning Irish neutrality and going into NATO. I supported him when he said that. But at the end of the day, the president is, I suppose in the constitutional sense too, shouldn't really have a say at the end of the day, because again, at the end of the day, you could argue too, he's elected by the people to represent the state, so he does have some kind of say. But it's a long thing, but basically, long story short, I don't think in the first place, because this would have this hassle would have been saved with the Israeli government, etc., at the moment, and then obviously the Iranian government, this would have been saved if they didn't write the letter in the first place, which I would have done as president. I wouldn't have voted. I wouldn't have ever voted to the Iranian government, because obviously the human rights abuses, etc., over there. And not even that, it's not a good look for the country too, I suppose. In a sense, as head of state is basically representing the people of Ireland in that degree, that we're supporting that we're not really supporting, but basically acknowledging in the way I see it, giving the legitimacy some way. But again, as I say, I don't think this Israeli embassy, like in fairness, I don't think they did it. I think it was again, fact checks on Twitter showed it too, that it was community posted that the Israeli embassy the Iranian embassy, posted it on the social media, and then it was on the Iranian TV, etc. That's where I presume it came from. So I don't think the president's right in that assumption. And I suppose too, if he isn't right in that assumption, he probably should correct the record. Particularly because he kind of accused them of sabotage and espionage. So, I don't know, but I'm just saying my opinion, what I think about it. Because it is but I suppose the country has been dragged into it a bit. Particularly when it involves, suppose this controversy, in three regards. But I do think, just to add to what Simon Howard said, I do think there's legitimate there, that there is a rise in the homeless figures because of asylum seekers. That probably is true. I don't think there's any denying that. I think there's the truth, but we shouldn't be bringing in them all anyways to lie on the street. It makes sense. Why would you bring people in to literally lie on the street in tents? It doesn't make any sense why we would do that. Why it doesn't make any logical sense why you would bring them over here to lie on the streets. It's beyond people to sure look at. They don't seem to be able to talk sense in this government. But again, let me know what you think. I know it's a huge thing. I probably missed out on some stuff, but that's what I know at the moment. So I just wanted to give my comment on it. Thank you.